Have you ever been looking online at properties and stumbled upon something that looks too good to be true? It's a beautiful property, but it's priced way below market value. And it leaves you wondering, what's that about? Well, it's likely that that property has what we call an offer presentation. And today I'm going to explain to you as a real estate agent what that is, some tips and tricks for how you can succeed in these scenarios, and answer some common questions around these dates, okay? My name is Larissa, and I am a Toronto-based real estate agent helping first-time buyers get into the market. If you would like to book a call with me, you can simply use my Calendly link below this video, or you can also like and subscribe for more information in the future from me. Now today, let's talk about offer presentations. So as mentioned, typically when a property goes up for sale, if we are in what we call a seller's market, meaning there's not a lot of inventory, but a whole lot of buyers, which we often find ourselves in Toronto, then in those cases, a lot of agents will opt to use an offer presentation date to sell a property. Now, what this looks like is, let's say for hypothetical reasons, the value of a property is $900,000. Instead of listing that property at $900,000 or $920,000, leaving some room for negotiation, what they'll instead do is they'll price it about 20 to 30% under the traditional market value based on comparables. So they might price this property at $749,000, maybe at $799,000, even $699,000 in some cases. And then they'll say we're holding an offer presentation for this property and the date will be in 1 week typically. So how it works is they'll usually give people about a week or so to go through the property, sometimes less, sometimes more, and then they'll review all offers at one time. Now, the benefit to doing this from a seller perspective is you're going to get more people through the home, and if you get more offers and more competing bids, typically you do end up with a better price or with more well-rounded offers with fewer conditions, better deposits, better closing dates. So it puts the sellers in a really good situation. Now, as a buyer, you don't always love these because of the reasons I just listed that are beneficial for the seller. However, I think in the buyer's case, sometimes offer presentation dates are helpful because it gives you a little more time to get your ducks in a row. So you can look at the home inspection, you can get your financing in place for the specific property, and it gives you a couple days to go see the property, to chat about it with your partner or friends or family, and then to get prepared for the offer. If there isn't an offer date and something sells in a day, sometimes you don't always get there to see that property. And I'm sort of going about this as if we were in a really competitive market, okay? Because that's typically when we see offer dates. So if you are a buyer, my best advice for you is to lean on your real estate agent for comparables. So if you do see something come up you like, your realtor should be able to give you a rough idea of what it might sell for based on the recent sales in the neighborhood. So let's say you see it go up, it's listed $799,000, your budget's $800,000. If the neighbor just sold for $1 million or for $915,000, it's a really comparable home, chances are it's not going to go in your budget. And so maybe that's property that you don't care to take a look at, or that you'll look at with the knowledge that it probably won't fall within your price range. So your real estate agent can help you sort of determine whether or not it's worthwhile to go see this property. Now, on the actual offer date, how it will typically work is the agent will ask the other agent, the listing agent will ask the other agents to register by a specific date and time. So they'll say, okay, we listed today, offer date is next Monday. They'll give the date and they'll say, please offer by 5 p.m. and we'll review the offers by 6. So what this means is that by 5 o'clock, they need all the cooperating agents to say, yes, I'm sending you an offer, or no, we're not going to send an offer. And what this does is it gives all the agents with interested clients a good idea of how many offers are going to come in. Because sometimes with these offer dates, there might only be one offer, there might be 2 offers. That's really good for the buyer. However, in some cases, they might have 10, 15, 20 offers, even more in some cases. So it gives you a good idea of what you're up against, and this might help you determine the price that you want to send in. If you and your realtor have determined as a buyer, hey, I think the value for this home falls between maybe $900 to $950, and you see there's 2 offers, maybe you start on the lower end, whereas if you see there's 20, maybe you start on the higher end, still well within your range. Just because there's more offers doesn't necessarily mean you have to send in more money. So with offer dates, you'll register by a specific time, 5 o'clock. By 6, you send your offer. So maybe you have a quick chat with your realtor and you determine the price you're sending in for 6. Or maybe you've already predetermined this and say, this is what I want to send in. I don't care how many offers are on the table. So after doing this, your agent will send the offer in at about 6 p.m. in that case. And then the sellers will review all the offers with their listing agent. In some cases, you do have the chance to improve your offer, but not always. If we're in a scenario where there's a lot of offers, let's say there's 20 for hypothetical reasons, and you're in the top or the bottom 5, they might not come back to you, even if you did have more money to put on the table. So I always say to my own clients, it's good to go in with the price. If there are a lot of offers on the table, it's always best to go in with the price that you really want to pay, because if that home sells and you see that sale price posted and you couldn't match that, you might be disappointed. But of course, every scenario is different, and by no means am I recommending that you should send your top offer price in if you're not comfortable with that and if it hinges on other factors, okay? So we'll talk more about tips in a second when you're sending an offer in this scenario, but for now, let's just chat about how they work. So typically, there's a couple things that could happen. If there's one offer that's a standout, it's way above the rest, it is the best price, it is the closing date the sellers want, there are few to no conditions in the offer, everything's perfect, the sellers might choose just to accept that offer and that's it. Everybody else goes away and continues on their home search. However, if we're in a scenario where there are a couple offers that are close, which is most likely going to be the case if you have 15 or 20 offers, then that agent will go back to the parties, sometimes everyone, but sometimes only the top offers, and they'll say, do you have room for improvement? Now, in Toronto and in Ontario, we just had some laws change. So I'm assuming we're not in an open bidding scenario, because if we were, then the seller decides that they want to have an open bid, they can tell people the contents of an offer. Assuming we're not in an open bidding situation, because even though it's now allowed, most people haven't gone that way yet. In that case, the listing agent can only tell you how many offers are on the table, and by law they have to, but they can't tell you the contents of the offer. So they can't exactly say, hey, you need to come up to XYZ number, but they can say, is there room for room for improvement in your offer? And they might even say, your top 5 or your top 10, but they cannot disclose much more beyond this by law. So in this case, the other agent, the cooperating agent representing the buyer, they might go back to their client and say, hey, we're in top 5, or, we've been asked to come back and decide if we're going to change our price at all, change anything else in the offer. And then you have to decide if you want to do that or if that's your best bet, okay? Now, in this scenario, it can take a couple hours if you're sending people back and then they're chatting and deciding and then they're signing and then they're sending it back. It can go on for quite a while. So I have definitely had some offer situations like this where we didn't hear back for 5, 6, 7, 8 hours, but sometimes there's a clear winner, and that is that. So it is really situational, and your agent you can lean on to kind of walk you through this process and help you understand it a little bit more. And having a good relationship as the buyer agent with the listing agent is going to help you a lot in this scenario, because if there is a chance to improve, it just means that they'll likely come back to you to do so, and then the seller can make their decision. If a seller does accept the offer that night, then you have to deliver the deposit the next day, and then at that point we are firm. So the benefits to doing this for a seller is that typically, if you're in this scenario, some people do get emotional about purchasing a home, and it has led to people bidding maybe a little more than they would have if it was only them on the table. If you think about it, you put yourself in a buyer's shoes. If you're the only one offering on a home, you might try to negotiate. You might say, I can send 900, but let's send 850 and see what happens, right? In this scenario, it's a little different. It's, I can pay 900, but I don't want to lose the house, so let's pay 910. So definitely it does play on people's emotions. So if you're a buyer in that situation, just have your emotions in check. Have a really clear idea of what the comparable properties look like, what the prices were, and what you think is a fair price for this home, because the reality is, if you're selected, you want to feel like you can walk away from that situation condition, that you did not overpay. And on the flip side, you also want to walk away if you didn't get the house, that you know what, it wasn't worth that value to me that the person paid for it. So you definitely want to go in with your emotions in check. Now, some tips when you're sending in an offer in this type of scenario, you want to make sure that your offer is, the best one you can send in some different factors. So price, I think we've touched on a bit. Again, lean on your real estate agent to send you comparables and determine what the price is that you want to pay. And it might be a range, and it might be depending on how many offers, but just have a clear idea going in. The other thing you want to look at is closing date. If they want a closing date, the seller, and it's 60 days, if you can offer them a 60-day close and they get another offer slightly higher, but those people want a 30-day close or 120-day, they might pick your offer even though it's not the highest price. So give them the closing date they want if it is feasible for you. Other things to keep in mind are conditions. So if it is a home, it's a freehold property, and they've given you a home inspection in advance, can you look at that home inspection and maybe remove that contingency and that condition from your offer? Can you maybe look at financing in advance? A lot of mortgage agents these days will look at a property before you put an offer in and tell you, you're qualified up to this price for this property based on the taxes and all the other things for this specific home. Or if you're looking to buy a condo, they might say, based on the maintenance fees and all of these things, you're okay up to this number. And if you can do that, perhaps you can remove your financing condition. Just make sure you're aware of the risks associated with removing the condition for finance or removing the condition for home inspection. But if it is available to you, it might be something worth considering. On the same token, if you're buying a condo, I typically recommend a status review. And in this case, if you can get the status reviewed by a lawyer before the offer date and then remove that condition, that will also benefit you, okay? So if you can basically give them as close to a firm offer with fewer contingencies, fewer conditions, that's gonna be a benefit, because in this scenario, if you do have conditions in your offer and you send it in with those conditions, it means you have an out from the situation if something doesn't work out with your conditions, which maybe makes some sellers feel a little more concerned, especially when they're saying no to some other offers on the table. So some things just to keep in mind. Other things you can do is you can send your deposit herewith, which means you could go to the bank, get the deposit check, and send a picture in with your offer that, hi, I've gone to the bank, I have the deposit, I'm ready to deliver it today if I'm the winner of this home. Doing this gives a lot of confidence to sellers that you are able to close and that you are financially sound. So I always recommend this to my clients as well. Of course, if you don't get the home, you have to bring it back into the bank. So it does require a couple bank trips, but sometimes this can make all the difference. Another thing you could also do is write a letter about yourself. So you can write a little bit about who you are, who your family is, your plans for this home, why you love this home. Some sellers do just care about the money 100%, but some are very sentimental about their home, especially if they've lived there for a while, or if this was their first property and this is going to be your first property, or they have the same amount of kids, or it doesn't matter. Sometimes people get really hung up on certain things. So a letter goes a long way. And again, it doesn't take that long to prepare. So if you're a buyer, here are some things that you can do, you can consider, you can talk to your agent about them, and just having your ducks in a row and being organized makes a huge difference. The one thing I always tell my own buyers as well is don't be afraid of the competition. If there's 15 offers on the table, they might not all be perfect. Half of them might have conditions and you might not. And some of them, the prices will really vary. So don't worry, put your best foot forward, send in what you think is a fair evaluation for this home, what you'd feel comfortable paying. And if you don't get the home, it wasn't meant to be, that's okay. And perhaps your next home is just around the corner. But I do think going through this process from a buyer perspective does help prepare you for the next time. And they're not all bad offer presentations. You get used to them. Just try to keep your emotions in check, try to make logical decisions, and hopefully you'll be the winner. If you have any questions about offer situations, offer presentations, or if you're even a seller listening to this and you want to chat more about what this means on the seller side and things to look for in buyer offers, I am more than happy to have a discussion with you. Again, you can book into my Calendly link below. You can also visit my website, larissafitzsimmons.com, which will also be below, and download a free guide either for a buyer, a seller, a renter, or a landlord guide. So you can check those out on my website as well. They are entirely free and for your disposal. So take a look, and if you have any other questions, I am more than happy to chat. Thanks for joining me today, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.